does it well.
Now we're back in the open session, you wanna go ahead and,
So I'll just share what some concerns were with regard to Mr. Wright. So, the advice I gave this morning, and you actually weren't here for that, Commissioner Gregley, but under the Roberts Rules of Order, the chairman can carry on, maintain discipline and decorum in a meeting. And if a non-member, being not one of the commissioners, is disruptive, then the commissioner can have them removed. Or if the commissioner chooses not to, or if the chairman chooses not to, then one of you commissioners can assert a question of privilege and ask for that person to be removed. And if the chairman disagrees and you want to overrule that, then you just appeal the decision of the chair, and by a 2-1 vote, you could have that happen. So there was a concern of whether there'd be disagreement among the commissioners about whether John Wright can stay or not. So my advice was, let's just follow Robert's Rules of Order, and if Mr. Wright is behaving himself, fine. If he's not, then he can be removed, and the rules provide for that. So after that conversation, I actually met with John for several minutes in my office after my presentation this morning. And but several employees have approached me and said, the concern I have, or they have, is he doesn't seem to be following the guidelines of the letter from the commissioners, which said you can come to conduct business if you are not just given permission by a department head, but escorted, and they're responsible for you, and then you're escorted through for all your business, and then you're escorted out. So last week, and I can't remember what day it was, it was Friday morning. Friday morning, John came in and was in the clerk of court's office, and several people said, who's got permission for him to be here? So I had to go in there anyway, so I started talking to him, and turns out he didn't have permission. He thought permission was he called and left a message for somebody saying, I want to come in. But nobody gave him permission, so I and Captain Corthall escorted him out. Well, then that happened, I think, a second time somewhere else. And then today, he came in, and I don't know that he actually had permission. He certainly wasn't escorted in and then escorted out or through all the buildings. So the concern that's been voiced to me is, if we have a policy, let's enforce it strictly. And that means he needs to be escorted. He needs to actually have permission. And, up until 6 months ago, I'd never met the man, hadn't heard about him. I don't have any personal vendetta one way or the other. I'd like every citizen should have the right to come access the courthouse and the government services. But if there is a problem, which the commission has decided there is, based on the safety issues or disruption, if there's a problem and there's a policy that needs to be enforced 100%. So that's what was basically the request was, can we enforce then, no, you really do have to have permission, you really do have to be escorted, and you can't just say, I left a message and then wander through the halls. So that's what I'm bringing to your attention.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add, because he likes to talk loudly and very forcefully, he scares some of these employees to death. Would he do anything? I don't know. I don't know that he would, I don't know that he wouldn't. But he really puts the employees uptight and takes a lot of time just ranting and raving and away from their work.
His shorts and stuff, and he's loud. And you're right, I guess, they'll scare people. There's probably a lot of people that way, I don't know. Anyway, like I told you the other day, and he behaved there all right and everything.
Matter of opinion.
Well, and that's the hard that as leaders we have to figure out. I mean, where's the line between someone who's just being a normal citizen who's participating, and if they speak loudly, versus somebody who's gone into the realm of a threat. I mean, the Constitution protects free speech whether you agree with it or not, whether you speak loudly or quietly, whether you think it's a waste of time or not. So generally, citizens need to be able to come in and participate and access their government. We all believe that, and we defend that. If we get to a point where it's a safety concern, if we get to a point where it's you've had your share plus the share of the other 20 people in the audience, time to talk, now it's time to let us get on with business. That's where you have to basically
Yeah.
enforce what, we still have to carry on the responsibilities. I can tell you today, when I came in, I had these two important issues to talk to you about. And I thought, man, if we get in a fight over John Wright and I don't get these things done, we're gonna be hurting. So I'm glad we at least got through those things, but obviously that's a concern. So, and this is not from me, it's from people who have a longer history with the problem than I do. I don't have good advice other than if we've set that policy, we should enforce that policy to the letter.
I don't wanna lose employees because of his behavior. I think there's a lot of good employees here in this county.
And when he has permission, if he has permission to go to the clerk recorder or the clerk court or something like that, you should just go to those places, right?
Well, I mean, I think the letter says to be escorted, so I mean, if.
Yeah, well,
if-
whoever, yeah.
Yeah, if we don't enforce that policy and we end up enforcing a different policy, then we've just established a different policy. So, you know, they say in contracts, if you agree on this, but then you do this, well, this other thing is what became the new contract by your actions, so.
So you don't think we could say that if he's coming in, he has to say what places what office he's going to?
I would say, look at that document, and it was pretty clear. I would go off of that
So,
letter.
Okay, like I say, in other words, he was going to your office today, that's why he couldn't come here. Or if he's going to, clerk recorder, he can only go there and then he's
Unless we do some kind of a relay race and we hand off the baton
no, we
to the
don't.
next person.
What it says is he may call, what we did in the letter is we said very, very succinctly, we are not looking to infringe his rights to participate. But he has been inciting people, there have been violent actions, there have been threats, those have to be addressed. And that's our job as managers of this county. We cannot have our employees sitting here in fear in this courthouse because of what he might do. And I've said this before, I will say it again. You never, ever, ever, after a school shooting or a courthouse shooting, hear somebody on TV say, well, we knew he was going to do this. They all say, well, he's been in trouble, but we never thought he'd do anything like this before. At what point are we going to be the guys on camera saying, wow, he's been troublesome, we never thought he'd do this before, or incite someone else? We have a responsibility. What the letter says is, he may call or make an appointment with the department head. That department head will then be responsible for escorting Mr. Wright into the building, conducting business, and escorting him out again. Any department head who wished to have a deputy escort may arrange that with the sheriff's office. That's what needs to be enforced to the letter, if we're gonna uphold this policy, right?
Yeah, I would say enforce it to the letter or it's gonna become worthless, but, I mean, you also, we don't have a lot of deputies to spare, so it's not like we can just assign a deputy all day on, say, Monday or Wednesday to do that, so, but, you know, I'm personally not worried about him coming and shooting the place up. I just, personally, I don't live my life in fear of that, but, again, I'm the new guy, so if there's other concerns out there, I don't wanna be deaf to those concerns.
I was clerk recorder before I ever went to the state for 10 years. And the commissioner's office was where Debbie's is now. And that's where the meeting room was. That's when the buttons were put on the desk to call for a deputy to come and help. And it was because of John.
Okay. Well, the other thing that the commission can do, and it doesn't have to be a deputy, but you can appoint a sergeant at arms to assist with keeping order in any commission meeting. So if, you know, if your deputies are busy and if you've got somebody that, obviously it can't just be a thug that you bring in off the street, but I mean, if there's a concern that's needed, you can appoint a sergeant at arms to just assist with that. I don't know. Other than that, I think for the most part, people in this county are not interested in coming in and having big fights. They're interested in knowing that their government's working for them.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment? I think I'm speaking for myself, but I think I can probably speak for most of the rest of the employees. If we follow this to the letter, and he's escorted in like he's supposed to be, and then escorted out again, we don't have any problem with it. It's just, and I agree with Cory full-heartedly, if you don't stop it right now, he's gonna be in and out of this building all the time and causing problems. Not necessarily danger, but he's a pain because he takes a lot of time, and most of it's frivolous stuff. It's important in his mind, but it wastes our time because we have to listen to him explain it at length every single time he comes in. Sometimes he'll corner one of those in our office and she's with him for an hour. That's not a real good use of county time.
Yeah, but I don't know that that's a safety risk either.
No, I'm not saying it's.
It might be an
safety.
annoyance, but it doesn't mean it's a
But,
safety.
but
the
on the
biggest
other hand,
annoyance.
it disrupts business.
Right.
And when he levels threats, he told the weed coordinator he was gonna shoot him if he sprayed weeds out on his road. That's a threat. When he says to a commissioner, you better get yourself to the sheriff's office for your own protection, that's a threat.
That was
When,
me.
yes, it was. When I say, John, is that a threat? And he nods his head and says, yes, how else do you take it? Again, we do not have the mental health ability to determine if he is or is not a risk. And Brenda once said to Elaine and I'm not worried about John either. It's the people he incites that worry me. So that's the other element to this. When he sits here and he's joking and laughing around with people like he was today, belittling another citizen, he is inciting people. And what will those other people do? We don't know enough to determine. We don't have a crystal ball that says, oh, they'll do nothing. Everything will be fine. We can't say that.
That's
So-
true, but I can tell you that there's a lot of free speech protection for someone to come to a public meeting and criticize or disagree or even belittle another public citizen. Or certainly an elected official. I mean, we signed up for it, we're gonna get it. And that's, we live in a country where you're free to come in and say things that nobody else wants to hear. So that's what, there's a line here. I don't know where it is because I don't know all the history as much as the rest of you.
And if you do want to debate the legal brief we went by, I'm happy to hear that, and we can reevaluate this. But we went by legal guidance, we followed a legal brief, we followed Nick Murnion, who was the guy that took care of the Freeman, and we weren't shooting from the hip on this.
Oh, I know.
We were doing our job as best we saw our responsibilities were, and again, one of our jobs is public safety of our employees.
Well, no, I'm saying I recommend we enforce this letter to the letter. And I don't know that that's happened the last couple of times he's been in the courthouse. Well, I know for sure it didn't happen last Friday. Today, I think it looked like it didn't happen either. I think he came in and, I don't know, whatever. So I'm saying I think the county commission should, and it wouldn't just be you, it'd be all of us who are department heads have to follow that.
Makes sense.
It does, and I'll send a memo out to everybody, and I'll do it either from me or from the commission, whatever you guys want, just remind department heads, they have to share in the responsibility and be diligent as well.
Did you have a comment?
I just had a question as far as what I'm hearing. And, okay, so all this with John, and I understand it because John is a pain and, he's a thorn inside. So even though, like, say, if the chairman, Frank, invites John to the meeting, that is null and void if these two say no, correct? Irregardless of, is what I'm gathering now when you're saying this? Because you're saying, okay, in this thing, he's got permission. Okay, what if Frank gives him permission to then come in here, but then you were saying that these two can override?
That's on disruption.
Were no Robert's rules, was that correct? What I'm understanding?
What I understand, and that's a good question, so part of the problem with this letter is it doesn't say a county commissioner, but I think a county commissioner probably has, because it's
He's gonna
equal
try.
authority as a department head to bring somebody in. But I don't think he was escorted from the front door to the commission meeting, which is, let's say you're gonna give him permission, then that's what you need to do. is actually escort him from the front door to the meeting. And then when he leaves, you escort him out, or if you're busy, you know, some responsible person escorts him out. On the disruption issue, for any meeting, it doesn't matter if it's John Wright, Corey Swanson, anybody, if we're being disruptive and the chairman has to say, you need to leave so we can get our business done, the chairman can do that. If they say, I'm gonna raise a question of privilege, Corey Swanson is being disrupted, please ask him to leave, and the chairman's not going to, then they can by a 2-to-1 vote can still assert that and say, hit the road, Swanson. And then I'll go back in there and work on my other cases.
Because you know John's gonna try anything and everything he can, so we've gotta get all the bases
Yeah.
covered.
Well, and
And that's one of the questions.
that's what I'm trying to convey. I think that as far as the conduct of the meetings, we should just try to understand the rules and use them. As far as enforcing that policy, we should enforce it to the letter. And if you, Mr. Chairman, if you want to bring him to a meeting, then you should escort him from the front door in here so that you're enforcing your own policy.
Or if he's escorted.
Yeah, but I wouldn't overly delegate it down to, I mean, I would make sure that it's a responsible person so that it doesn't turn into a bunch of side trips, and next thing you know, it's, you know, public, the employees are all striking, so. And I have to run to court. I have court in 3 minutes.
And just one last thing is, if you wanna do that, you and I could each, or either one of us, if we couldn't have him removed, could call a deputy and have him sit in our meetings again.
Mhm.
So, that is allowed on your, it's a mess if we go that route, but we could.
And you can also, as I mentioned, appoint a sergeant at arms at some point, at any point for a meeting. And then you can say, John Wright's here, and I want you to keep an eye on him, and, or if, you know, whoever it is, whoever your troublemaker is. Corey Swanson's here, he's troubled, keep your eye on him.
Actually, he should get his own escort or call the sheriff's office for an escort then, rather than us.
No, I think it's
Read
us.
this. You gotta read the
But
letter.
if it's the commissioner's meeting, it's the commissioner's responsibility to escort him in or out if you want him here.
I've got to go to court, so
Yeah,
the judge
okay.
looking at it.
Thank you.
If it's in our office, it's Doug's responsibility to do that.
We're all responsible for our own.
Exactly.
So do we need to send him a new letter?
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty much spelled out in here. I do think, though, that we need to address all the department heads so that they know what their responsibilities are. And that we're all doing things exactly the same. So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Okay, we'll close this, and then we'll get this, so we get it posted. Have you write it up?
There is something the trust board wanted on the agenda. I'll have to get that language, so if you'd let me get that on the agenda before you approve it. Or make a note so that Tammy knows that there is one more item coming if you want to pre-approve.